Hello and welcome to chapter 222 of the Corona Diaries.
Morning.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very well, Anthony. I'm in rude health.
Rude health.
And I'm high on life. And the fact that the legendary Howard Greenhalgh is in our midst.
He is
Hello,
indeed.
guys. It's been a long time.
Oh no, hasn't it just? How are you, man?
I'm good. We used to shoot on film the last time I saw you, didn't we?
Well, I don't know. I don't muck them out. I just ride them, Howard. I don't know what you people are up to.
Yeah. No, I'm very good. You know, it's the years have passed, the industry's changed many times. I went from videos to commercials. Um, and now we're all kind of content makers, aren't we? Because because that's where the good stuff is, I think. And there are no clients, which is
Oh,
brilliant.
what? No, no upstart pop stars getting getting up your nose and not
Exactly.
turning up on time and throwing tantrums.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now,
Just
before we go any further, I'm just going to interject and just for those people who haven't been concentrating so far. So for those of you listening who haven't really been paying attention, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the videos from the promo videos from Holidays in Eden. And if you didn't catch the name at the time, Howard's the chap who basically conceived, organised, shot, did. What would have been your title, Howard, on those? Producer, director?
Director, video director.
Right.
Yeah.
So Howard was the brains at that point in time. And because we couldn't remember much about them, we thought for completeness we'd bring somebody else in who wouldn't be able to remember much about them as well.
Well, I'd be impressed if you remember anything.
It was
How
a long
long
time
ago
ago.
was it? Yeah.
Well, I did a bit of homework, guys, just a little bit. I watched the videos through again. And because, you know, certain things do slip your mind at our fine vintage age. And there's some great memories there. I mean, you know, for a start, this man is one of the kindest, most level-headed joys to work with. And believe me, I've worked with a few crazy, well, more than a few crazy minds and whatever. But yeah, you were so. This is a compliment, Steve. You were so easy, man.
You're not the first person to say that to me, Howard.
Yeah,
Most of them were women.
yeah. What my wife said, he's a lovely man, that Steve. He's a really kind man. Because she did your makeup once, way in the
Did
back.
she?
She's a makeup
Oh,
artist, yeah.
God.
So we got family history, my friend.
Ah, well, that's nice, isn't it? Well, thank you, Howard. I've changed, obviously, since then.
I've never uttered those words, Howard. Not to my knowledge.
It's his public persona.
Ah, that's what it is.
Your rumbles.
So let's first things before we go any further, I need to ask you a question directly, Howard. I need to address an elephant in my particular room that nobody else is aware of. I had a friend called Catherine back in the day I used to work with, and she had the same surname as you, but she pronounced it Greenhalgh.
Well, yeah, and there you open a box because every member of our family pronounces it differently. So when people say, "How do you pronounce your name?" I says, "I'll be buggered if I know." I pronounce it like Halj, so Halj,
Ah,
Greenhalgh.
Mm.
My brother says Greenhalgh.
Well, I've called you Howard Greenhalgh forever, and you've never corrected me.
Because it doesn't matter. I always, you know, at least you're not one of these people that go, Howard Green, Howard. It's Celtic. How the hell are you supposed to pronounce that? I think it's Celtic. It's got some Celt in it.
right. Okay. Well, in which case, that's fine then. So actually, I don't feel too bad about the fact that I've kept wanting to say Greenhalgh because that's my history, and
Yeah.
actually, there's something in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty sounds pretty accurate to me.
All right. Okay. Fine. Oh, I feel so much better. But you're from my neck of the woods, aren't you? As in,
I was born in Halifax. From
that was
Hull, or Halifax. Good Lord, deliver us. That was the because it was a heck of a place, was Halifax.
still is.
It's in very different ways. They don't cut your head off anymore, do they?
Well, not well.
Well,
The
Not
occasional
before nine
Tuesdays.
o'clock at night.
let's not get into that. Yeah.
Right. So, where are you now?
I'm in London. I
Right.
left I left Halifax when I was 19 after my first art course. Came down to London and stayed here. Well, brief times in Los Angeles. But no, I'm here. I'm here now. Yeah.
Okay. And what took you to ultimately you cross paths with the band that cross paths with Steve because of what you did, but what took you into what you did? How do you get from art college to producing promo videos?
Well, very quickly, I always loved photography. I had a camera since I was 14, and I also was a classical trained pianist. So I went from wanting to be a pianist to a rock star, and that didn't work, let me tell you. And I wanted to be an architect, but you got to go to college for 7 years. And then I settled on mixing music and photography, if you like, together to do music videos. So I went and did a graphic design degree, and then I went to the Royal College of Art to do a master's in, well, I was in the graphic design school because I thought the film school was a museum, and started messing around with all kinds of, new emerging technology in the day. And let me tell you, that was nothing like we have today. So yeah, I just started putting images together to music, picked some of my favorite tracks at college, made these little spoof music videos. Um, and yeah, among other things I was doing, and a music video company called M Ocean Pictures, headed by Paul McNally. They picked me up, so that was my first kind of go into an industry that kind of I always thought fitted me like a glove.
Well, no wonder he knows what he's doing, Anthony.
I know.
Well, I would never say that. Part of the thing is, it's interesting you say that, but I always loved it because I always used to experiment with stuff. And, you'd write these treatments and record companies say, well, can you show us an example of that? And I'd say, well, no, because it kind of hasn't been done yet. Because back then nothing had been done. It was so primitive. When I look back on a lot of my music videos, I cringe at the simplicity and the primitiveness of them. Um, yeah, I forgot where I was going with that now.
Are you kind of like a music video George Lucas then, in terms of the fact that you knew what you wanted, but when you were doing it, actually, you couldn't get your vision because literally the technology didn't exist?
Oh, there was a lot of that, yeah. I mean, I was the first to, get properly on board with computer graphics when it came out. I was the first to get on board with, hyper slow-mo shooting on cameras that, had just been invented. And some of my best mates, because of my work, are in post-production, which is those guys that do all the crazy shit with the editing and things. And we used to sit in the pub and we used to say, what could you do this? And what would happen if you did this? And some of those would be to do with technology. And some of them would be, I'd go into when we had to do the transfer from the film to the video, which we used to have to do. I'd go in with a box of spanners and I'd get the engineer to rip the guts out of this unit that it was called a telecine grading unit. And I'd be sticking bits of plastic in there and shining lights in there, which was anti-technology, really. But I just used to love it because people would say, how the heck did you get that massive lightning strike in that forest? Boom, 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 this bigger. And I'd say with my finger. And it literally was. I put my finger into the machine under the cathode ray, and I'd kind of boom, 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 like this. And you get these lighting effects, which would have cost you an arm and a leg.
Well, you're lucky to be alive.
Well, you're lucky to be alive, and I've got a few stories about that on our Iceland trip when we get to it. When Anthony decides that's the chapter.
Right. Well, that's because you nearly bumped me off on multiple occasions.
I'm trying to do that thing where I get 10 minutes worth of seriousness before I let the two of you go, because I know
Yeah.
what's going to happen. I'm not going to get you back after that. So I'm just building us up there.
Exactly.
But right, okay. So actually, that chimes with something you said, H, because one of the things you said about Howard because we've talked a lot about you, Howard, without you knowing, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
It's out there. There's nothing we can do about it. But one of the things that H said was you had this amazing way of creating, and I think I probably penned this line, but a Hollywood production value on a Cricklewood budget.
Well, I've always prided myself through watching years of Blue Peter as a kid that, what those guys could do with the squeezy bottle, I could do with a film set. So it was just knowing how to, the simplest of sets, if you like. I mean, how many Infinity White and Infinity Blacks did we do in our times? But just, having the right stuff there, doing the right things, and making sure you pointed the camera at it now and again. And, some of it was quite simple. Because I kind of got two styles, really. One is ultimately filmic, and the other is, surreal and effects driven and technology based and stuff. And I was really happy sitting in between that. And people, I'd like to think that people could never pigeonhole me in a style, And
Dryland was filmic, wasn't it? And No One Can was really about
animation, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember.
Cover My Eyes was, a stab at some kind of VR and yeah. So there was for me, that's a perfect spread. One's that, one's this, one's that. So it's
You always had a happy knack of introducing a really attractive woman into the mix as well, or usually two or three,
which a fortune pass.
Which made the artists a little keener to go to work in the morning.
Well, if you write songs about the girl in the movies and the girl in the whatever, what am I supposed to do, Steve? I've got to illustrate the lyrics.
I just thought I'd blame you. That's all.
Yeah,
no, but that's only the blame for these particular instances, isn't it? Because there's years of the stuff we need to.
Yeah. Those are professional incidents. There's a lot of unprofessional ones as well.
I do remember you when you came to, I think we had a meeting in EMI about the No One Can video, and you just said it's gonna have a look, and we went great. And what? And well, I can't really explain it. And right, so that's it. Yep. It's gonna have a look, and that's all he would say, and everybody went, "Oh, well, we better find out."
You better trust him, then, haven't you?
You better trust. It did look great, man. I mean, it's really
well, yeah. Again, Steve, you look back. I mean, first of all, it was a beautifully simple song. It was heartfelt. To me, it was like a love letter. It was a diary entry. It was you writing about a girl. So I thought, well, let's give it that kind of like transient, slightly dream, slightly nice dream look, because I did plenty of bad dreams, let's face it. And it would have been at the time that I was experimenting with multi-layered animating backgrounds and keying on blue screen onto things to make it look as if it was, kind of really organic, I guess is the word that we've all stopped using now. And that was as simple as, wasn't it? Well, it was a day in. Was it Brighton? We were.
Yeah, Brighton with Terry.
Yeah.
Who then married Simon Cowell years later. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah.
Let me take you back a quick step then.
It wasn't Terry Hatcher, was it?
No, it wasn't Terry Hatcher. No. But that's fine.
Wasn't Terry Pratchett. I know
it was Terry Pratchett.
It probably wasn't Terry Griffiths either.
Terry something, wasn't she? Wasn't she Terry something? Oh, I don't know.
Terry's all gold.
Lovely girl.
So let me take you back a little bit, Howard. Right.
Yeah.
So you're making promo videos. Okay, that's one thing. We've established that. You probably then at that point are working with a number of labels who know what you're all about and call you in for different things. So take something like the Marillion project then. What happens then? You get a call to say we'd like you to make 1, 2, 3. Did you get a commission for all 3? Was it one at a time? How does the process start?
No, I think it was one at a time. I mean, in those days, still now. I mean, at least it's something that's still relevant in our industry. They'd look at a show reel. So, and in those days, you had a video commissioner who was a knowledgeable person about who was out there, what they did, how they did it, what it was going to cost. Now, crikey, I don't know. I don't think there's any of them left really. But so you I think I probably was invited in to see you, wasn't I, Steve? And we I don't know if for the first time, did we? I think you would always try and meet the band before because, as we all know, a face to face, you get stuff from it. And although I always, was completely led by the lyrics, if the lyrics would lead you to a visual solution for it. But yeah, so meet the band. You've already heard the track. I might have said a few ideas, or I might have not, or as Steve said, I might have just said, it's going to be, it's going to have a look. And then I go away and write a treatment, as they call it. And I probably, for let's say cover my eyes, I'd probably said, this is kind of like a man fantasizing about women, which is probably not what the track was about. But you got to remember, this is how many years ago, Steve? 20 years? 20 more?
More.
Yeah. So virtual reality.
30 odd.
Yeah. Virtual reality was, it was just embryonic. Nobody's seen it. As we know, the plastic glove and the TV monitors and stuff. And he just thought, okay, well, plug him in, brain waves. Let's read his mind. And in it, we'll have all these, these girls that he's singing about. So again, quite simple. I remember, you letting me put this, which is always difficult to get through a record company, put like an audio filmic beginning to it. So we had you with your footsteps, didn't we, coming in and sitting down, and then the music starts. And at the end, you allowed me to get hold of your track and just kind of, spool it backwards and just to give it that, I guess, cheap Blade Runner look, which but look, it's budgets were not massive, but you just had to be very mindful about how you were going to do it. And I think when we look back on things stylistically and filmically, you do it differently now. Whether or not you do it better, I don't know, because now I'm an old man taking a view on it, but I certainly know a lot more. So yeah, it was just, listen to the song and what images came to mind, and could you do it for the money, kind of thing.
Right. So in this process, do you just go along with whatever Howard comes up with? Do you feed into it in any way? Do you respect the creative boundaries there? Because, because there's a creative boundary in terms of Howard's coming up with a visualization, but they're still your words.
I think for Cover My Eyes, I just abandoned myself to whatever he wanted me to do. I think he wanted me to lie down and spin around on a turntable most of the day, whilst the girls in very tight clothes occasionally wandered past. I was cool with that. And then for No One Can, I had no idea what he was going to do. He just kept saying, "It'll have a look. Trust me." And I kept going, fine. And then I'd say, "What do you mean exactly?" And then he would explain what he meant exactly, and I would be none the wiser. So I just went with it. And then we went down to Brighton. And as I've said before, Howard just tended to say, "Look, go over there in a long black coat and look moody. And if you can't look moody, look heroic. And so when I look back at this videos and think, well, I look like a bit of a tosser, it's mainly because he'd given me this brief to try and look heroic all the time. So I was just trying, nose in the air, coat billowing, trying to look vaguely, like Darcy coming out of the pond. And and then he'd shout, "Cut! That was heroic, fantastic. Next," and we'd go on to the next shot. So that's what I remember trying to look heroic a lot in Brighton, and then I remember trying to look heroic a lot in Iceland.
Oh yeah.
The only time I really got involved, I think, with anything you'd call an idea was when we got back from Iceland. We didn't really have the vocal performance because we were gonna do it with me standing in a boat or on a rock or something, weren't we? In the Blue Lagoon. And then the light wasn't right, and all those old ladies were in swimming costumes were laughing at me while I was trying to be moody. And and I go, all the time that I've known you, and they're going like that, Howard, I'm not comfortable. So in the end, we came back from Iceland having shot loads of really, really amazing footage, which almost killed me on a number of occasions, and I dare say he'll go into that in a minute. And I got out of the bath one morning at home, looked in the mirror, and my hair was dripping wet. And I thought, that's kind of a look. So Howard had booked a studio somewhere in London. And I went, I think I went straight, I think could be getting this the wrong way around, but on the same day, I was sat in with Bob Harris at Radio 1, going through my favorite records with him. And I think I went straight from there. I got in a car and went across town to the studio that Howard had set up, just so we could do a close-up of me singing the song.
Yeah.
And I walked in and he said, "I want to do it dripping wet, Howard." And he went, "Oh, really?" And I went, "Well, yeah, trust me."
and it was a good idea. Oh,
well, I don't know the EMI.
You froze up there, Steve.
Oh, don't worry. It's the thought of being dripping wet.
Oh, well, I remember that well because I remember getting bollocked by EMI. What do you mean? What do you mean you shot it with wet hair? The track's called Dry Land. And you go like, yeah, but it's not as straight meat and potato like that, is it? And I thought you looked good and it looked vulnerable and
a little bit, man.
That did not go down well with EMI. They loved your locks,
Well, I got the bee in my bonnet for the Woody Allen, the Charlotte Rampling in Stardust Memories, where she's in the mental hospital and he goes to visit his ex-wife. And it's all just cut, isn't it? And sliced, so you get the same take again and again, and it's really disturbing. So I arrived at, I want to do it with wet hair, and I want you to make me look like Charlotte Rampling in Stardust Memories. And that was the only time I had an idea. And that was it.
And it was a good one.
Well, it made it a much less mainstream piece of work than it otherwise would have been. It would have been me flouncing around in Iceland looking heroic and singing the song, wouldn't it? But suddenly it injected this kind of what the fuckness into it, which EMI hated. Ultimately counted for a better piece of work because they don't know shit, do they?
I think the video commissioner was a little bit in love with you, Steve, and she liked this the locks. To be honest,
your hair did have a softness at that point in time, didn't it?
Oh, it did, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
It's still soft.
Yeah. It's not quite retained exactly that look.
I don't think I've got the face to go with it, unfortunately.
Oh, I don't know. I think your face has grown into your hair.
He started off mostly as hair, and then over time, a body grew underneath it.
There's something in that actually about what you've just said. Both of you just said that, because I could see that with the record company, and I could see, and actually, if you look at a lot of the images for the holiday stuff, you do look very. Your hair is very soft and very flowy, and you've got a definite prettiness about you. I'm not saying that in a horrible way. I'm just saying the way those pictures have been done, and this, that, and the other, which is always interesting as well when you put you with the rest of the band, because it seems to jar just a little.
They've
But
never been an image band, have they?
no, and I'm going to get to that with Howard as to how the hell you shoot a band that look like Marillion. But that must have been a thing for the record company, because that suggestion you made, that Charlotte Rampling thing, that the wet hair, the harsh cut, the this, that, and the other, it is the opposite of what they probably were pitching for all that time. So did you struggle with what they were pitching for at the time then? That kind of almost soft focus, Steve looking.
Who are you talking to now? Me?
Yeah.
No, because the way it always works with major labels is they whisper in the director's ear, or if you're making a record, they whisper in the producer's ear. They never confront the artist, or that's the last resort is actually having a word with the artist. They hate to do that because I guess they learnt long ago it's counterproductive to piss the artist off, because then they just flounce out and refuse to do anything. So what they do is they whisper in the ear of whoever they perceive to be in control of the situation, and so there's always that cutout. So I didn't know what they wanted. All I knew was I was on a plane to go to Iceland to discover him with his feet burnt. I remember you arriving and you'd burnt your feet.
Yes. God, you've got a bloody good memory, mate. No, it was a geezer, not a geezer, but a geezer.
You had trouble with the geezer.
And I remember, because you've always got your camera to your eye, so all you're seeing is what the camera sees. And I thought, I'll just put my foot there, lean in as far as I can, and as it gushes up, I'll follow it up, which I did. And then I feel this wave hit my foot. Of course, I hadn't figured that the splash pool changed every time. So I've got a boot full of boiling water with a camera in my hand, which I'm not going to drop. So my foot took a bit of a beating there. It wasn't too bad, but it was, I think it was just first degree. So we carried on, didn't we? Or did I moan the whole shoot? What?
No, you didn't. I just remember arriving in Iceland, making my way to a hotel room, and you being sat there with your foot up in the air.
Yeah. Was it in the bar? Was it? Yeah.
It's in the bar. What, your foot?
Yeah. But that video was, I mean, I used to shoot in Iceland a lot. And I probably shot there before we went, so we kind of knew where we wanted to go. But some of the shots then, and one I just want to talk about. We were on this, and I could not find the name of the waterfall, but it's this waterfall that goes down into this chasm, and there's no, you can't even see where it lands, so it's a hell of a place. And we've got Steve, because we're in the chopper, because the whole thing basically was shot in a chopper, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, nowadays, drones, we'd all have our feet up in a nice little easy up, with some guy waggling his paddles with a pair of funky specs on, and we get probably better shots, to be quite honest with you. But this had to be the full-size chopper, with bloody great big camera mounts and stabilizers in it, and and me and the DP and the pilot and whatever. Anyway, so we did this shot, and we came at Steve through this chasm, and as we rose around it, the camera, the chopper banks, and the Steve there with the famous black coat, and he's you must have had your hands in your pockets or something like that. And I remember you were stood on this rock right on the edge, and the rotor wash, which is the air from the chopper's rotors, which is powerful, because we were close, came down and it hit you. And I saw your coat for a minute, like balloon out, towards the rock, and I nearly hit myself because you've got to be. I mean, choppers are great things, but they'll bite you if whatever. And I look at subsequent shots where you stood right on the edge of this bloody cliff, and of course there was probably very little radio to ground to radio, wasn't there?
Wasn't anything, really.
They just walk along that edge, whatever. And what you couldn't see was what we could see, which was a sheer drop. You probably thought, oh, I don't know what you thought, but God, but the best one, I came up with this great idea that we'd start dry land with like this 1 minute tracking shot over a glacier. The idea was we're in the middle of absolute nowhereness, which believe me, isn't it, Steve? The inside of Iceland is incredible, and I would say if anybody can afford to get there and go and see it, then do it, because it is a different planet. It really is. Anyway, so we drop Steve off on this in the middle of this glacier, and we fly away from him for like what seems an age. And I'm looking at the pilot, and I said, you did take coordinates, didn't you? I mean, of course he did. But what happens if we can't find him? Because we're talking about probably a good couple of miles away from him, and it's all just this white glaciated landscape. There's nothing really delineating landmarks or anything like that. And there's a saying in Iceland, is like, if it's absolutely sideways rain and wind, a producer would come up to you and he said, Howard, if you don't like the weather, don't worry. In 10 minutes, it's going to be completely different, because the weather came in like these tidal waves over the. He says, but if you do like the weather now, you've got 10 minutes. And this was going through my head as we're flying away from him, thinking, what happens if we get heavy cloud cover over? We can't find him. Anyway, we did, as you saw on the video, because we had a cracking pilot, John, the Greenland rescue pilot. What a great guy he is.
He was.
But it's. Would I do some of those shots today? You have to say that you'd be looking for signed indemnities, wouldn't you? Because it's a different world we're living. Some of the stunts that we used to do, some of the fire explosions, not for you, Steve, but Jesus, it was proper, not dangerous, because you always had experts. Our pilot was an absolute expert in filming. But still, there was elements of risk to it. And I think that I probably couldn't shoot what we shot for dry land nowadays without some serious cabling of you to safety lines and whatever, because nobody's expecting things like chopper wash, are they? Rotor wash.
No, well, I wasn't.
No, you weren't.
I'm glad you never mentioned that.
Yeah.
But I do remember as I climbed down onto the skids of the helicopter on in the middle of that,
Yes,
top of that mountain and like on that glacier.
Yeah.
I remember that pilot craning his head over his shoulder and looking at me and saying, "Nice knowing you," and then breaking a grin. And to this day, I'm not sure whether that was in humor or I think he got all the bases covered at that point. And I remember stepping down onto the ice from the I remember him throttling back to see if it'd take the weight of us in the first place, because nobody knew, did they? And then I remember stepping off the skids onto the ice, gingerly putting one foot in front of another, thinking, am I going straight down through this? Because we didn't know, did we? I mean,
that's the thing. And you were walking on the edge of that crevice, on the director. Just walk around a bit. Yeah. And
that was the most nervous you got, actually. I mean, at one point, I saw you, gesturing your finger for me to come back. You see,
because again, we could see the bloody chasm of ice, and we all know that is not rock, is it? So
no, and you're not coming out of it once you've fallen down it.
yeah, I know. Anyway, we brought you back. The worst thing that happened was you wet your hair, as far as the record company was concerned.
Yeah, exactly. That was dangerous.
Yeah.
What I wasn't expecting today, I mean, obviously I should have probably thought about this, but I wasn't expecting actually that level of potential danger and disaster on a video shoot.
Yeah.
Because it's all over your face, Howard, even now, even this many 30 odd years later.
Yeah.
We've taken you back there, and actually that's taken you straight back to thinking that's probably further than I probably should have gone, or certainly as close to the edge that I probably should have gone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't prepared for that today, actually. And Steve, you by the sounds of it, you just took all that in your stride. Were you concerned at any point, or were you just like?
Yeah, what were your thoughts, Steve, when you saw the chopper disappear miles away and there was just you on that glacier, which moves, of course. We know it's moving. Yeah. What do you think?
I felt like Neil Armstrong without Buzz Aldrin. I thought, well, if, I've been let. I mean, I've never been, and I can't imagine ever being again, so lonely, so completely cut off from humanity. With the distinct possibility that could be permanent. I thought, what if the engine fails or something on that bloody chopper? I'm here for good. It's a long walk and I wouldn't know which direction to walk.
You couldn't walk off that glacier.
No.
And a lot of the locations that we were in were so remote that you can't walk in or out. Well, I probably could if you had an expedition and you had 3 months to get in and out, but you just can't get there. So yeah, I mean, there you go. Another level of risk. Bloody hell, I hadn't thought of that.
I was stood there kind of thinking, well, I fucking hope they come back.
You weren't wondering if Iceland had polar bears or anything like that?
As the engine noise died away, as you went off over into the distance, and then the engine noise died away and into silence, I thought, blimey, maybe this is a bit rash. But I've always been a person, especially if I'm in inverted commas performing, I'm utterly reckless, and I always have been. I've always hung upside down off lights in gantries on stage and climbed up PAs and jumped onto balconies and ran around and then jumped back onto the PA on the other side of stage. I've done stuff like that. Kicked chairs from under skinheads because they weren't listening, and little clubs in London.
I love your Instagram, but lead singer of Marillion, lyricist, diarist, incident-prone lover of life.
I think that's
fair. Like, well, we threw a few incidents at you, but you managed to love your life and get back. So, yeah,
exactly. And I've always been up for whatever, if it said hang upside down up this. I'll tie this rope to your right leg. Can you hang upside down off it? I don't know, with a rose in your teeth. I would have gone, yeah, sure.
You're a little bit like Bruce Dickinson in that respect.
Well, I hope it's the only respect.
Yeah. He's a good lad, this Bruce.
He fences and he flies planes. He's got a couple of things going.
He would do anything. He's like you, Steve. Well, you want me to do that? Yeah, you sure? Yeah, okay. That was it. End of conversation. And you were like that, Steve. I think.
well, what's the point? I mean, I think as an artist, or I don't know if I can speak for anyone else, but speaking for myself, when you're surrounded by people and technology and you're thinking this is incredibly expensive, you don't
Yeah.
want to waste it. So if somebody says, do this, it'll look great, you go, right. Because if you go, you're compromising all that money that's being spent
Yeah.
on something that isn't the reason the money's being spent. So if Howard said to me, do this, it'll look great, I'm not thinking, oh, I don't know, it seems a bit dangerous, so it seems a bit this, or I won't be comfortable. I'm just thinking, I better get on and do this because, it's not cheap, all this and all these people. Everybody's cold. I mean, the fucking cameraman in that helicopter. We're
Yeah.
flying through the air in a helicopter which has one side removed above a glacier in Iceland. It was freezing. I had about 14 layers of clothes on and I was frozen stiff. And he was operating a metal camera with his bare hands. And I just couldn't imagine how cold he was. So I'm thinking about that as well. I'm thinking about what other people are going through on your behalf. And I know
Yeah.
they're paid and all that, but they're doing it on your behalf, so you better give them what they want. That's how I look at it.
And that's why people say you're an extremely kind man. Because you think of other people.
Pragmatic. I've
I
got
could give you a whole list of artists that don't, mate. I'll tell you.
yeah.
Well, funnily enough, we're into that on TCD. So if you want to doll out a few names, we're already,
It's all right. Nobody listens to it.
nobody listens, Howard. You're
Yeah, they do
fine.
though. The lawyers listen to these things.
Well, they only cock half an ear at ours. We seem to have got away with a fair bit so far.
We've said.
That's it's the Tom Cruise way, isn't it? That actually you do whatever needs to do to make sure it's believable. Tom isn't off finding himself to get the nuances of the speech right. He's working out how the hell to jump off a cliff on a motorbike to make it look right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, he's a bit crazy, isn't he? I think you've probably got to be a bit crazy. You've got to have I don't know, something in your blood and bones that's just a bit, a little bit out of the ordinary. And I don't mean that in a pompous way. I just mean what most people wouldn't do, certain people will, and Tom's one of them, isn't he?
And I think that his films are given massive value because you know that he's doing probably 100% of it, maybe not quite, but yeah, I mean, somebody that does it on stunts, I mean, yeah, it just gives it validity, doesn't it? I guess you know that he did it. It's not, because nowadays with all these deep fake things, I mean, you can make anybody do anything in any place at any time, say what you want them to say, light them as you want them to light, and they were never there. So yeah, there's still heroes out there.
Just to confirm for the record, folks, everything we've said on here that we're slightly embarrassed about, we did say. All those things over all those episodes was us.
I'd like to say that anything truly awful I've said wasn't me.
Neither of you have got a single wrinkle. I dispute that. You just nah, say nothing. Carry on. Next question.
So what we've identified today then is that Howard, you're a bit of a groundbreaker, and you think of things and you make them happen, which is incredibly joyous to find people and somebody who does that. We found out that H, you're the Tom Cruise of music promo videos.
Well, got the potential.
And the EMI don't like wet hair. I don't think that's a bad morning's work, to be fair.
Well, if they didn't like dry land, I don't know what they thought the Brave movie that Richard Stanley made after that. That was probably the last straw. They did kind of start coughing by the door after that and ushering us out of the label at that point.
They made one more attempt to shoot you in soft focus there with Beautiful, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, to be fair. Yeah, that's almost a good video. Do you remember we went to that fancy dress party for Doris Day and Night?
Yes,
You know,
Doris Day Night, yeah.
Doris Day and Night's birthday, do.
Yeah, and Björk was there, wasn't she?
Björk was there. I bought her a drink.
Yeah.
Her opening line to me was, "You have to care," and I put that in a recent song.
Ah,
But it was an
yeah.
odd thing to say by way of a hello to someone. It's usually something you mention during a conversation, isn't it, rather than start a conversation with. Yeah, it was interesting meeting her, and the other members of the Sugar Cubes were sat at the table as well. I found most of the Icelandic people to be, like have a screw loose. I mean, obviously,
They're wonderfully, delightfully bonkers, aren't they?
yeah,
They
have another way of looking
clever.
at the world, I think, but on
Yeah,
soprano.
yeah, they do.
So Howard, how about the other bit of this then? Because obviously you've for all, well, certainly for two of the three, I mean, arguably for three of the three, but certainly for two of the three, there's a definite narrative. I would say Cover My Eyes and Dryland have got a real definite narrative thing going on. But you've got to intercut the band at some point, haven't you?
Yeah.
And is that complicated? Does that feel a little bit forced? Did you ever push back against that because it kind of worked against the narrative you were trying to create, or did you just accept it for what it was?
Well, I mean, the band is the band. The lead singer's always going to get the 70% camera time, aren't they? There are bands which they don't really want to be in it. I think part of the reason probably is because they don't have to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and sit and freeze on, or get wet somewhere. But I think that, if a band wanted to be in it, you try to integrate it. The worst thing is when the rest of the band wanted equal billing to the star, if you like. I mean, they're all stars, um, but you just got to shoot it sympathetically. You make sure, if there's a great guitar solo in it or a drum beat that is big and whatever, then you got to make the decision. Is it the big volcano erupting on the drum beat, or is it the drummer going like that? I think the volcano always won actually, um, but I didn't mind as long as it was kept to a if that's what if the video wasn't about the band and it was this, you imagine dry land, we got to Iceland, we've got all these incredible landscapes. And then I think was it Malum Tarn was shot the band, Steve?
It was, yeah.
It was, yeah. Because it was the only place that I thought looked like it was on a different planet, right on the top of the Malum Cove.
The limestone pavement, they call it, don't
Yeah,
they?
the limestone pavement, that's right. Yeah. And I was good with that, just a bit because it's a band, it's Marillion. It's not Steve Hogarth on my own, is it? It's a band. So I think that, fans like to see some inclusion, I think, surely to a point.
Absolutely, they do. I mean, if it was a Beatles video and Ringo wasn't in it, you'd think, well, where's Ringo?
Exactly.
You've got to have him in for a minute,
Yeah.
or everybody's going, what's happened there then?
Yeah.
And I think they would. And I think that Malum footage cut straight into the Iceland footage. I
It's
mean,
not bad,
it
is
didn't
it?
look like two different parts of the world in the video. It just looks like they're there somewhere.
Well, it's funny when I watched it this week again, and I'm just staring at the blue sky behind, and I thought, why, today, stormy sky, whatever sky, whatever sky you bloody want. But shifting stuff around in those days, wasn't that easy. But we could have made such a better job of that nowadays. But 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, it never bothered me. I guess that's like the film director's equivalent of hissy records. If you're a musician, signal to noise and the noise levels and all that will keep you up at night. The punters don't give a damn. They're just listening to the tune, aren't they?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
So Howard, where have you ended up now then? Because you talked about obviously promo videos, then you talked about other stuff, commercial stuff, probably brand based stuff, I'm guessing. What fills your time now?
Right now, well, I was working in Los Angeles with Simon Fuller, who I met through the Spice Girls many, many, many years ago. And we've been working on several projects in a little film. That was last year. And this year, I'm actually doing my own YouTube channel. Because, really I should be retiring and putting my feet up, but I just can't because I just love, it's like fishing, you get your camera, you come back and you catch images. Yeah. So we're building this spaceship concrete and glass house up in the Chilterns. So I'm I'm practicing at being a presenter, like old Kevin McLeod, and saying stuff to camera, which I tell you, it's so hard being the proper side of the camera rather than the safe side, which obviously is behind there with the cappuccino. So I'm enjoying that at the moment, actually. There are projects around, but so many people want 20 for the price of 5 in the time of 2. And it's just got to a point where I'm thinking, you have a bar. And if you're going well below that, then I think it's time just to step out and do your own stuff. And I can as well, I don't have to be working, 52 weeks a year at the moment. So yeah, I'm just enjoying dicking around, I think is the technical phrase for it, Anthony. Yeah.
I can't think of anybody better suited to it, Howard.
In a northern way.
In a northern way. Oh yeah. I don't want you southern dicking about.
No, it's proper no nonsense dicking about.
Absolutely.
Dick is proper.
Howard, thank you very much. You've been ever so generous with your time, and thank you for answering what was a random message. I
get the amount of people wanting me to talk about videos from 30 years ago, and of course, the first thing is, I can't remember anything from that. They always say, don't you? If you can't remember it, you had a bloody good time. But I was always quite professional, I thought. But yeah.
You're an absolute star, is what you are. H, I'll see you next time.
Okay, lovely. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Wasn't that fantastic? And what a lovely man. A kind man, I think, that Howard Greenhalgh.
Kind man.
Touche, Mr. G.
You got to do your next one with wet hair. You know you have. You know you have.